cash value in satisfying affordable housing obligations as it relates to the city.
What Frank said. Just a couple of things that I would add to that. Your ordinance requirement at 30-229B4 is interesting in its construction in that it requires us to provide affordable housing consistent with the rules of the Council on Affordable Housing and your adopted housing element. So it's essentially a self-updating provision in your ordinance that as COA changes its rules, automatically what we're required to do changes. Sort of an interesting construction of a zoning ordinance, but that's what we're dealing with. The city also adopted a gross share ordinance that applies generally to all districts. So in this case, we have a district-specific requirement that is in conflict with a citywide gross share ordinance. And it's important because the Council on Affordable Housing has recently put out a new rule proposal. So we've got your gross share ordinance based under a prior rule proposal that was partially invalidated by the appellate division, and a new COA rule proposal that's now out that your gross share ordinance would not be consistent with, and we're an applicant before you with a provision that says we have to be consistent with what COA is doing. To make a long story short, because you're not the only folks in this kettle, if you might imagine, there are many applicants trying to work with municipalities. The situation here is that you've got a tract that was once zoned for 1,200 units, came down to 700, we're now down to the application that's before you. So it's a long-term evolution of a reduction in development on this tract. And what the new rules call for is for a developer being required to provide affordable housing, the municipality has to provide compensating benefits. So for the affordable housing that we would be providing on site, theoretically we would be getting more residential density, which is clearly going in the opposite direction from where the city has urged this application to go. So recognizing reality, what developers are doing across the state is dedicating land to the host municipality. What that does is it allows the municipality to get the land under their control. Whether they ultimately use that land for affordable housing or make that a park and some other land affordable housing, it at least gives the city some control by giving them a land resource which gets something from the developer who's before you now that's of value to the city, rather than letting us go without doing some sort of obligation, but doesn't commit either the city or the developer to actually doing affordable housing on that site, but it does give some value to the city, recognizing the obligation of the developer. So that's where this idea came from, that dedicating in excess of 14 acres to the city, essentially as a gift, goes beyond an ordinance requirement. It relates to the access issues as Mr. Fisher was describing, but it also is in large part satisfaction of whatever this developer's relationship to the city on the affordable housing issue would be. As council also mentioned, there is a financial element that goes with this, and obviously that'll be something that's going to be negotiated further as the ordinances are amended and implemented in terms of gross share, what that number should be for this particular property. But controlling a fairly large parcel of ground gives the city control over its destiny, whatever that might be, and whatever this particular tract ultimately becomes. And we would suggest to you that as a result of that dedication and commitment to additional fees that go with that, that we are in fact fulfilling ordinance requirement 30-29B4 through this particular mechanism that we're proposing.
I have no further questions of Mr. Ronkamp. The board does.
Are there any questions from the board? I do have a question regarding the two parcels in the northwestern part of that.
Yes, sir.
There is an easement. I'm not sure who maintains that road right now. I believe it's a dirt road. Who would be maintaining that in the future?
That would be the property owner that's retaining that would have the choice. We are proposing that the owner of the lodge, which has most use of it going through the other two properties out to our new Road D, would be responsible for maintaining it, and also two caretaker lots are there to maintain the lodge. So the lodge has the ultimate